Good morning. Whew, good morning. Your greatest fear is true. They let Roger Penn have the microphone again. Don't worry, it won't take long. It's my pleasure to introduce our final speakers of this 82nd annual Florida Public Relations Association Conference. I'm so excited because I get to introduce two people, and I'm going to ask them to start making their way up here and take these rather quiet-looking chairs. First, many of you know Eleni Kovatsos, APR, but you know her as FPRA Central West Coast Chapter President, award-winning. God, all kinds of love. Eleni's the Senior Manager of Communications for Florida-based First Watch Restaurants. She grew up in the restaurant business at her parents' breakfast and lunch restaurant on Siesta Key before studying public relations and business at the University of Florida. I knew we were going to, all right. It's okay, your time is coming, right, Chris? Her operations experience and her education were a perfect fit for the First Watch brand team, which she joined in 2015 when she was 12. Eleni currently leads public relations efforts for the brand, including its earned media strategy and crisis communications. She leads First Watch's social media and customer care teams, as well as other strategic public relations and marketing programs. She joined FPRA in 2015 and hasn't looked back. She was named the Central West Coast Chapter's Thomas Noonan Rising Star in the summer of 2018, before beginning to serve on the chapter's board of directors for later that year. In 2019, she was named the chapter's Joe Curley Rising Leader and participated in Leadership FPRA before taking the role of chapter president. That was in the fall of 2020. My, how time flies when you're having fun. The fall of 2020, does anybody remember that? Shortly thereafter, she earned her professional accreditation in public relations. She will be interviewing a fantastic leader who I've had the privilege of knowing for about 25 years, since he first started working at Curley & Penn as a young 20-something. Chris Tomasso came to us from an internship with the Orlando Magic. They trusted him enough to assign him to be Shaquille O'Neal's shadow after the team drafted him. That spoke wonders about Chris. I knew he was tough, but not tall. I was thinking of asking him to dial Shaq up on his cell during today's session, but I'm afraid he would have, and the big guy would have stolen the show. They remain really close friends. Before telling you why he's here, however, I want to tell you who he is. This is important to me because he's a special friend. He's a devoted family man, married to his college sweetheart, Melissa. They have two wonderful kids who are both students at their and my alma mater, the best university in the world. Go UCF, right, Chris? Go Knights, charge on. They're great parents, devoted and generous alums, and involved in community and causes they value. Chris Tomasso is the Chief Executive Officer and President of First Watch Restaurants. Come a long way. He joined the company as Chief Marketing Officer in 2006. He brings decades of restaurant industry experience to us today as we hear his story, including executive leadership positions at both large-scale public and private domestic and international multi-unit concept restaurant organizations. Before joining First Watch, Chris led national and international marketing efforts for renowned brands such as Cracker Barrel and Hard Rock Café International. Since joining First Watch, Chris has helped drive the company's industry-leading growth, including a comprehensive multi-year rebranding strategy. During his tenure, First Watch has grown from, listen to this, about 60 restaurants to more than 400 today through a well-orchestrated mix of organic growth and acquisition. Chris serves on the University of Central Florida Foundation Board of Directors. He was inducted into the university's Nicholson School of Communication and Media Hall of Fame in 2016, honored on Nation's Restaurant News' list of most influential restaurant CEOs in 2021, and its Power List in 2017. He is currently the cover boy of FSR magazine, the Full Service Restaurant Industry Bible. Chris, I think everybody in this room would tell you that she deserves a bonus for that one. Now, Eleni, your assignment is to ask him the tough questions. I know you will. Without further ado, please welcome Eleni and Chris.
The clicker? You have the clicker?
Thank you, Roger. Okay, so we'll kick it off with a softball.
Do we have time? That was long.
So, listening to Roger kind of walk through your bio, one would think that now as CEO and president, you would have a degree in business or finance, but that's not the case.
Nope. Roger kind of gave it away. School of Communications, my degree's actually in journalism, with a specialization in advertising and public relations. So I intentionally stayed far away from business because of all that math. And, you know, back in the day, the way you enrolled in classes at UCF was you went into I guess it was the gym back then, it was the intramural gym, and every school had a table and you waited in line and you had your catalog, and you know, I saw the different schools, and you know, I'm not embarrassed to say it now because, again, Roger says I'm a family man and have been married for a long time, but you know, I looked around and all the pretty girls were lined up for communications and PR. So I said, I think that's where I'm going to go. So that's where I went. I literally knew nothing about public relations at the time, but looked at the course schedule and didn't see much math on there, so that's where I went.
I think several people in this room can
We can
relate.
be honest with each other today, right?
And then once you started studying communications and learning about that world, you wanted to go into sports and entertainment. Roger mentioned an internship with the Orlando Magic, so how did that all play out?
Yeah, so first I think it's important to note that I went to UCF in my junior year. I went to community college first in Sarasota, or Manatee County. First one in my family to go to college, so didn't really know much about the path to college. We never talked about it in my household, didn't know much about it. So I graduated from high school and just enrolled at community college. Again, just really, again, I saw an article or saw something on news that said if you have a college degree, you make, you know, $400,000 more over your lifetime. And I said, okay, well, I can do that math. And I was able to get, you know, financial aid and paid my own way through school and worked the entire time. So I got to UCF as a junior, and so I was about 20 years old. Went right into PR classes, and a public relations club was just starting on campus, and I signed up for it, and nobody else signed up for it, so I was made president of it. So, and then started to try to recruit people so that I could at least have somebody else to talk to. And you know, that was great. The school was great. A lot of people, you know, in this organization, frankly, I went to school with, and I've already talked to a lot of you, you know, since being here. So it was for me the start of everything. And so when I looked at public relations and thought, okay, what part of this would I want to do? I always had an affinity for sports and entertainment, and really the business side of it, though. So I thought, well, if I can get a degree in public relations, then maybe I could apply it to something like that. I also specifically chose UCF because I did see friends of mine that were ahead of me going to Florida and Florida State, and then getting great educations, but then coming back to Orlando because the jobs and the industries that they wanted to be in aren't found in Tallahassee and Gainesville. So one of my other rationales was if I could go to UCF and make contacts while I was there, perhaps that would help me get a job you know, more quickly out of school than somebody who was coming from another city and trying to get that job. So that's my whole thought process as you know, from an 18-year-old graduating high school to getting in PR.
Right on. And you did start in sports with an internship with the Orlando Magic. Talk about that.
I did. So again, no cell phones. Internships and things were posted on a chalkboard, or excuse me, on a bulletin board in a hallway at UCF, and I saw that there was one for the Orlando Magic in their marketing and promotions department. So I, wanted to do that. I knew that I wanted to get in with the Magic somehow. The organization had just started. It was an expansion franchise in Orlando, and I thought if I want to get in sports and entertainment, that's really where I want to go. So before the internship program was posted, though, I was trying to figure out a way to get in, and I knew, I did my research that the head of the marketing department was also a UCF alum, Kerry Coates, and not knowing how to get to them, I signed up to be a vendor to sell beer at the Orlando Magic games, and my plan was to have my resume in my pocket, walk around the arena, and when I found her, just stop her and hand it to her and kind of give her my elevator speech. In between the time I signed up to be a beer vendor and went and did my training, and when I was supposed to start, I saw this internship posting, and so I ended up getting an interview for that. I owned one suit at the time that I had to have for my fraternity, so I put that suit on. I went down to the Magic for my interview, and I sat in the lobby. Their offices used to be at the old Orlando Arena. I sat in the lobby, and there were two other guys my age in really nice suits, and I got to talking to them, and one of them was from the University of North Carolina Sports Business Program, and the other one was from Duke's Sports Business Program. So immediately I knew I was outgunned, and thankfully I got called first. And I went into the interview, and I just laid it all out there for Kerry. I said, listen, there's two guys out there. Their resumes are going to be way better than mine. They probably have much more experience than I do, but I promise you I'll work harder than both of them combined. And we had our interview. It was very intimidating. I left. And then 2 days later, she called me and offered me the internship. And really, that kind of started everything for me. That opened all kinds of doors, because it was right after that Shaquille was drafted, and kind of all the eyes of the NBA, of the sports world, turned to Orlando, and I was in the middle of it. Shaq and I are the same age. He's a big, goofy kid. We had a lot of fun. He knew I was still in college. He was great. But I got experiences that I never could have imagined. School was great, but the real world experience that I got from the Magic was invaluable. And Kerry let me be in meetings that I shouldn't have been in as a 20-year-old with no experience. But I got to see a lot of things that really had nothing to do with sports. It had to do with leadership, how she commanded a meeting. She was the highest ranking female executive in the NBA at the time. And if you haven't met her, she's an unbelievable leader and business person. And I learned so much from her, just not saying a word, just sitting in a meeting and listening to her. But through that, I got to meet all kinds of community leaders. Again, everything was focused on the Magic at that time. So the first thing I had to work on was the Magic Girl tryouts. That was great. But then the second thing I got to work on was the Orlando Magic Youth Foundation Golf Tournament, which is a celebrity golf tournament to raise money for the Youth Foundation. And there was a committee working on that was all community leaders. So, county commissioners, city commissioners, people in business. And one of the folks on that committee happened to be the head of marketing for Sunshine Network, which has since become Fox Sports, and now I guess it's Bally Sports. And she and I worked closely together on the tournament. She was a great lady, and she offered me a job to start there on the Monday after I graduated from college on the Saturday. So I graduated Saturday. 2 days later, I was working in what's it called now, Roger? It was the Bank of America building, the one downtown with the 4 stacks. It's something else now, but so I thought I made it. I was going into this big high-rise every morning, going up to the 18th floor and working in sports, and it was great. We had just brought on the Marlins. We were working with a lot of the colleges in the state, so I felt like I had kind of found my place, and again, got to work on a lot of great things there too.
Yeah, little did you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't ending there.
Yeah.
If we can flip the screens to show the slide, we've got some fun pictures from back in the day that I think would be interesting. So from
Yikes.
From Sunshine Network, you of course didn't stay in sports, and you ended up working with a couple guys in this room who are well known and well respected among this group. So talk about that transition.
Yeah. So I speak to students at the Rosen School of Hospitality, and then also just in the School of Communications all the time. And this particular story is one that when I tell it, then they want to talk to me about it. So again, I felt like I was right on the path that I wanted to be on. I was having a blast. It was so much fun. And then 6 months later, a mutual friend of mine and Roger's contacted me and said that Curly & Pin was looking for an account coordinator, which is the entry-level position at the firm. And when you major in public relations at UCF, you know all about Curly & Pin. They had just opened Universal Studios, probably one of the most respected agencies in the Southeast. And so I thought I would go. Again, I wasn't looking for a job. Now here's the funny part. I was making $18,000 a year at Sunshine Network, which was a lot for me back then. And I did my interview, and I don't know if it's still this way, but the interview process at Curly & Pin was grueling. It was a writing test. You had to do they gave you a situation. You had to write a PR strategy. So I did all that, and then was offered a job. And I swear to goodness, Roger called Carrie and asked how much, or called Sunshine Network and asked how much I was making, and offered me $500 more. So it was $18,500. But at that time, it was very intriguing. The idea of working in different industries and doing that, even though all along I'd been saying I wanted to work in sports and entertainment. So I went back to Sunshine Network and I said, I've accepted another offer, I'm leaving. And they offered me $40,000 to stay. And I had only worked there 6 months. And so I spent the day and that night thinking about it, and I still made the decision to go. I didn't even negotiate it with Roger. I should have negotiated, but I went back and I said I would take the position because I felt like it would be better for me from a growth standpoint. In that 6 months at Sunshine Network, I didn't really have a mentor. I didn't have somebody who was kind of guiding me along the way. Everything I was doing was kind of on my own, and I really felt like I could learn a lot from Roger and Joe and what they had built, and really what they were going to continue to build. So I went back and took the job, and it was great until I got my first paycheck, and then I did math about how much a $40,000 paycheck looks like versus an $18,500. But that was a fork in the road for me from a career standpoint, and I'm kind of proud of myself for taking it back then, considering how young I was. I was 23 years old, 24 years old. From there, it was just, a fun ride. I worked on all kinds of different industries. Some were fun, some weren't. We worked on a natural gas pipeline. We worked on phosphate mines. We worked on, I did a little bit with Universal Studios. I worked on the blood bank at the time. So the diversity that I got there, to me, is really what helped, this PR pro to CEO timeline was really more about not just being so focused on one particular industry or one particular discipline. And it really was the start of something for me because I got to see, when you're in the meeting with the CEO of the blood bank, you're talking as much about the business as you are about public relations or reputation management or things like that. So people always ask me, who did you learn from? Who are your mentors? And I just feel like I took little pieces from everybody I interacted with. Sometimes it was positive, sometimes it was negative. But even when it was negative, I would say, I know I don't want to do that when I grow up. So it was
When will you grow up?
I don't know. It was a great foundation, for the rest of my career path, frankly.
Awesome. You mentioned mentors a lot, and how Carrie and Roger are both still very influential people in your life. And you also have told me the story about when you were with Curly & Pin, you went to pitch Hard Rock, and it was a really fun series of events there. Let's talk about that.
Shortly after joining Curly & Pin, we had the opportunity to pitch for Hard Rock Café International's corporate PR business. Hard Rock Café International at the time was based in Orlando, and they had an agency out of Miami that was doing like celebrity and entertainment PR, but they wanted someone for corporate PR because it was about to be Hard Rock's aggressive growth period. They were going to be opening a lot of restaurants, hotels, casinos, all those things were starting to bubble up. So we went and pitched, Roger, myself, and I was account coordinator, so entry level. I'm pretty sure I was on the pitch because of my entertainment, background. But we went in this room with the CEO at the time and a lot of people. And he was and is unlike anybody I've ever met in my life. if you look up ADD in the book, his picture will be there. But we went in there, we made the pitch. I thought we made a great pitch. He wasn't listening, wasn't paying attention, was calling his assistant over, doing this, getting on his phone. And so we leave. I thought it was hell. I thought it was not good at all. The pitch was great, but I didn't think anything resonated. We get in the elevator, and I forget what I said, but I know I said a bad word, and I said, screw him. He doesn't deserve to have us representing him. And Roger started laughing, and Kathy started laughing because I was just young and impatient. But we left, and then got the call that they wanted us to represent them. So I hated the guy from that meeting, and then ended up loving him because he's just a character. There's no other way to explain it. His ADD is what we all grew to love about him anyway. And his father was the head of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission at the time, and he has since gone. And he used to be Michael Eisner's right-hand man. So we had a lot of great years of working with Hard Rock, and it was a very enriching experience, I would say. I was, again, not very worldly, and I just remember one time being told, hey, you need to fly to New York. Hard Rock's doing this event with Aretha Franklin. I'd never flown by myself, didn't know how to get around New York, and I'm sure I got screwed out of cab money and everything else, but and then was sent all over the world, really, doing things for Hard Rock. Hard Rock at the time was the epicenter of theme dining. The restaurant in Orlando at that time was the highest grossing restaurant in the world. It did $55 million a year in sales. So again, any band that would come to town, anything, they'd come to Hard Rock. They would donate memorabilia. We'd host events all the time. So just had a really, really great time for about 5 years. Still working on the other clients, by the way, but Hard Rock kept taking more and more of my time. And then the CEO left. They brought a new CEO in, and they wanted to decentralize their public relations. So they had told Curly and Pin that they were going to move on and have local PR firms in the different markets, but then asked if they could hire me. And obviously, with a contract like that, we can't take their employees. They couldn't take ours. So it required Roger and Joe saying that it was okay for me to do that, and they did, which I'm grateful for. And so I went full time at Hard Rock as started as a marketing manager at the corporate office, and again, just opening Hard Rocks all over the world, many different countries. I was 30 years old, I think. I was the youngest VP in the history of Hard Rock, and again, built the Hard Rock Live concert venue at City Walk. So just a lot. It was actually, and towards the end there, when I started to have a family, it was, I knew it was probably not going to last long when I had to fly to Rome, Italy for a 2-hour meeting and get on a plane and fly back. Thank God I was young when I was doing that, because it was pretty grueling. Our parent company was in London, so we did a lot of international travel.
Right on. And I know you have a ton of entertaining stories from your time at Hard Rock, and we don't have time for all of them today, but there's one that I love about a campaign you did around Keith Richards. Can you tell us about that one?
Yes. So it was coming up on Y2K, and we wanted to own the tower in Times Square for when the ball dropped. And they weren't dummies, and they said, if you want the year 2000, you have to sign a 3-year deal. So we signed a 3-year deal, and we did a campaign in all of Times Square, but then also in New York, because they were expecting like 3 times the amount of people to come to New York for that particular New Year's Eve. And so we had all these quirky billboards and things, and we had them on cab toppers too, and one of them said, it had our logo, and then it said, proud to feature fried items, chicken tenders, onion rings, and Keith Richards. And guess who got in one of the cabs that had that sign on it? Keith Richards. So we get a cease and desist letter from his lawyer, and they didn't think it was funny. We did, and so we started talking to them, and it got picked up on Entertainment Tonight, and it was almost a full page in People magazine. And actually, my joke there is that particular article that I was quoted in and Keith was quoted in was in the People's 50 Most Beautiful People issue. So I always tell people I was in the People's 50 Most Beautiful People issue. But long story short, we got we worked something out with Keith where we made a $50,000 donation to his charity and agreed not to talk about it again, except here I am talking about it. You know, so we settled that. We gave him the donation, and then when we looked back on it, we got like $1 million worth of publicity from a $50,000 donation. So from our standpoint, it was great. It was, you know, it was just one of those things that what are the odds that he even saw it, but he did, and so we had a little fun with that.
Yeah. One day we'll have to do just a sit down where you tell all the stories from
Yeah.
Hard Rock, because I know there are a lot, but you weren't a marketing manager for long with Hard Rock. You actually pretty quickly worked your way up to VP of Worldwide Marketing. So how did that happen?
Just right place at the right time. We were doing a lot of things. Things were going our way. The company was growing. You know, it was performing really well. We built this concert venue in Orlando, and we did a very intimate grand opening for it with Elton John. That was, you know, imagine sitting in a 2,000-seat arena with Elton John, and he just played for 3.5 hours. We raised like $1 million for the Elton John AIDS Foundation. Actually, I have some good Elton John stories. You know, things were going really well. I loved my job. It was a lot of fun. It was high profile, and it was always something new and exciting every day. I mean, you'd go open a Hard Rock in Nashville with Charlie Daniels and Vince Gill, and then you'd go, you know, that picture with Sugar Ray, or I got to be on the set of The Sopranos for a full day of taping. I mean, just things that, you know, if you had a bucket list that early, those things would be on it. So yeah, it was flying high.
Right on. And flying high, loving your job, potentially thinking it was the end game, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, you're no longer with Hard Rock.
Yeah, so I don't know, can they see this?
If we can put the slide up, please.
So this article came out in April of 2003, and it really talking about, you know, kind of what we've been doing at Hard Rock and how successful it's been. And there's a quote from me in there that says, you know, I can't see myself working anywhere else. And then 3 months later, I wasn't there anymore. And the reason for that is, if you go to the next slide, was our CEO, who I love dearly and still, you know, love today, was abruptly ousted, as the headline reads, from his role by our parent company in London. And all of a sudden, this rocket ship that we were on just got flipped on its head, and we had no leadership. The parent company was trying to manage us from London. We had a couple of people internally that were jockeying for the role, and that's all they were focused on was trying to, you know, take control of the company, and it quickly became not fun. And I always say that executive recruiters are shrewd. They see that upheaval, and they know, okay, now's the time to go in and pick people. And so I got a call from an executive recruiting firm that was representing Cracker Barrel restaurants and said, hey, they'd really like to talk to you. They need somebody who has restaurant experience but retail experience. And if you think of the two brands that do that, it's Hard Rock and Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel has the retail stores. So they literally made me an offer I couldn't refuse. My kids weren't in school yet. So I told my wife, I said, if we're ever going to do this, this is going to be the time to do it. I said, we'll either be there 3 years or 30 years, but they wined and dined us. They sent the jet down to get us, all that kind of stuff. So it was you know, it just felt like the right time. And I also thought personally, from a professional standpoint, you know, I could go work for a $2.5 billion publicly traded company, get some experience working for a publicly traded company. And so we made the decision to do that. And so again, it was 3 months later, I wasn't there anymore. The funny thing there, so everyone said at the time, you're going from rock and roll to rocking chairs. And my first meeting with my team at Cracker Barrel, they were in a room, and it was a big team. I mean, Cracker Barrel is a $2.5 billion company. We didn't have much budget at Hard Rock. We kind of did everything, you know, seat of our pants. But I walk into the room and meet my staff for the first time, and there's about 30 of them. And before I could even say anything, a girl raises her hand and she says, hey, I read up on you. She goes, why did you come here? So that was fun. So Cracker Barrel, you know, great brand, beloved by so many people, obviously a very successful organization. I was there for their high growth years. It ended up being 3, not 30, and I'll tell you why in a second. But we brought, you know, one of the things I was able to do was kind of bring the music industry to Cracker Barrel. They had some CDs of unknown blues artists and that type of thing. And I said, what if we actually got, real artists to do CDs with us? And so they said, well, we don't know how to do that. And I said, well, I do. And so we started a series. We started it with Alison Krauss and Union Station. Obviously, it had to be bands that were relevant to Cracker Barrel's audience. And I don't think a lot of people know, but Alison Krauss has more Grammys than any other female artist in the music industry in history. So, and she's, if you haven't heard her voice, she's amazing. So our first CD was with her. And the neat thing, this is People Magazine here as well, is there's I don't know if you can read it, but at the same time, Starbucks was really getting into music, and they had just launched their Alanis Morissette CD. And the article here was that we were selling more Alison Krauss CDs per restaurant than Starbucks was selling of Alanis Morissette. And the reporter wrote, and they ain't got but 529 stores. So it was neat because all of a sudden it put Cracker Barrel on the map from a music standpoint. And then artists just started calling us. We did Vince Gill and Dolly Parton and Charlie Daniels and Elvis Estate. We did one with the Elvis Estate. But we weren't just repurposing songs. We were getting unreleased songs, if it was the Estate, for example, and unique things that it became the #1 selling item in the Cracker Barrel retail store. So I still kind of got to bring some of that in there. But that's really how I got, I would say, away from sports and entertainment and then into the restaurant business.
Breakfast.
Yeah,
so
breakfast.
Around the same time that all this was happening at Cracker Barrel, there was a Sleep a Little concept out of Sarasota, Florida. Breakfast lunch, been around since 1983, not doing anything crazy, and you somehow ended up at First Watch. So tell us about that transition.
I did. So about 3 years into Cracker Barrel, same thing, management team upheaval. The two guys that hired me, who I loved working with, were ousted. The chairman made a coup and moved the founder of Cracker Barrel out. And so, again, it wasn't fun. And I knew of First Watch back then because Cracker Barrel would always win best breakfast until a First Watch opened in a town. But they were always like that little fly that was just around your head because, again, they only had 40 restaurants, so never really thought much of it. I got a call from somebody who said they were just purchased by a private equity firm, and it was the private equity firm that had taken P.F. Chang's public. They were invested in Outback. They sold Baja Fresh to Wendy's, so a lot of great restaurant experience. They had Popeyes for years and took them public. And so I grew up in Sarasota, so I never in a million years thought there would be any place I could work in Sarasota. If you haven't been there, it's kind of small. And we had a place down there, and so my family and I would go down there on holidays, and Ken, the founder of First Watch, would ask to meet with me. It was the weirdest interview process you'll ever hear. They never paid once for me to come down and interview, whereas I just told you Cracker Barrel sent a jet to get me. But he would say, hey, whenever you're in town at your place, why don't you come see me? And I said, well, I'm kind of on vacation, but I'll come see you. So I had breakfast with him at spring break, Easter, Memorial Day, Labor Day. Not Labor Day. By Labor Day, I was hired. So after about a 4-month, it wasn't even really an interview process. It was just kind of a get to know you. And every breakfast, he would bring somebody else from the organization. There were only about 20 people in the company, in the home office back then. So they asked if I'd be interested in joining. I was ready to move on from Cracker Barrel. I took less pay. It was a much smaller organization, but I did see a ton of potential. And so I joined in 2006. Kind of reminds me of the PR club. I was the chief marketing officer, and I was the only marketing person. So I was chief of myself again, which is not easy, by the way. And so just started to help them. The private equity firm said, we need somebody who can help us grow this to where we think the potential that it has. And Ken's great, but he's mostly an operations guy. And so it was really to come in and fortify the brand, establish the foundation. What's the voice of the brand? How do we want to present ourselves to the consumer? When I joined, there were 4 different logos, 2 different uniforms, one of which was a Hawaiian shirt for like half the company. The music was elevator music. You can kind of see the difference in the evolution here on this slide. But so it's been actually last week was my 15th anniversary at First Watch.
Happy anniversary.
Thanks.
So you joined in 2006. We'd already been around for, 23 years. Mm-hmm. And we had about 60 restaurants. And in those 15 years, like Roger mentioned earlier, we went from 60 restaurants to 400.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
We laugh because it took us 30 years to get to 100 restaurants and then only 8 more to get to 425. So First Watch is a company and a brand that is kind of obsessed with almost perfection. And so I think for the longest time, First Watch never felt like they were ready for that growth. And it wasn't until we launched that brand repositioning that Roger mentioned called Urban Farm, where we changed the entire look and feel of the inside of the restaurant, the menu. We looked at every single consumer touch point. So even though I was chief marketing officer, it really was more concept development, kind of building it from the inside out. We talk about it as flipping the marketing funnel upside down. So we really had to start. We always had great service. So that was if you're in marketing and you work for an organization that services the consumer, whether it's retail, restaurant, if you have that, then you're in great shape because you can always build on that. And First Watch always had that. But we were so disjointed. There was no consistency in how we presented ourselves. So the first 5 or 6 years for me was spent doing all that, changing the uniforms, changing the music, working on the look and feel of the restaurants. And so we set that foundation, and then we started to grow. And we found out that we were more than a regional concept. In 2008, we decided we know we do well in Florida, and we know we do well in Ohio. Where else can we go to see if this really is a national concept that has legs to grow? And so we opened in the DC market, which from a restaurant industry's perspective is the hardest market to break in. It almost crippled Chipotle when they first went into that market, and we all know how successful they are. So, and we struggled a little bit at the start. But then, just like First Watch always does, we built our customer base one customer at a time, one visit at a time, spend less than 1% on marketing. So, I always say that we are marketing, but we're not. We're really more about, putting the brand out there and making sure that we're relevant and that we stay relevant for the next generation. So we started opening successfully, and then we sold to another private equity firm in 2011. We had 100 restaurants at that time, and then we decided to acquire a concept. So we're obviously based in Florida. We were growing east to west. There was a concept out of Denver called the Egg and I, and they were growing west to east. And it was just starting where we were butting up against each other now. They didn't bother us when they were out west, and we didn't bother them out east. But then as we both started to grow, they were opening across the street from us. It was getting to be a hassle, so we bought them.
As one does.
Yeah, we went from 112 restaurants to 217 in one day. And it's the story of when the dog catches the car, like then what do you do with it? So we bought all these restaurants, and now we had to do something with them. So they were doing about $200,000 less per restaurant than we were, and we were trying to figure out why. At first, we thought we were going to run 2 brands, but as we looked into the P&L and all of that, we realized that if we converted these restaurants to First Watch and could get them up to our volumes, then the purchase would make complete sense. So we did that. We converted all those restaurants. We sunsetted that brand. There's no more Egg and I's, and we converted all the restaurants to First Watch. It allowed us to get a stronghold in Colorado and Texas, where they were very strong. So immediately we had West Coast expansion like that.
And all of a sudden, just like we acquired that brand seemingly overnight, all of the trade publications, business news were recognizing us as largest, fastest growing. All of these accolades started sort of rolling in pretty quickly with that acquisition. We have a photo of some of those on the slide here. And, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we went from being relatively unknown. I mean, I would go to restaurant conferences and get on the elevator, and someone would see my name badge and say, what's First Watch? And I would tell them, and they say, well, but what's the name of the restaurants? And I would say First Watch, and they wouldn't know it. And then just, again, because of our scale, and then all this recognition we started getting raised our profile tremendously. And, every year we bring our general managers here to Orlando, and I get up and kind of do a state of the business. And actually, we used to do it in Sarasota. Now we can't. There's nowhere in Sarasota that'll hold them anymore. So we do it in Orlando. And one of the things I said was, I don't really care about being the fastest growing. I want to be the bestest growing. So And I would say it like that so they would remember it, that, don't worry about how many restaurants we have. Our customers don't care how many restaurants they have. They want to know when they go into their local First Watch that they're going to get a great meal, great service, and, a smile, even if it's behind a mask these days, but that they'll be treated well. So that's the message. And ironically, the concept that we bought, the Egg and I, they were focused on fast growth. They weren't focused on quality at all. So, and we could tell that when we met with them and talked to them. So that's kind of how we've been doing it. Although the acquisition helped, but we've been opening 50 restaurants a year on our own. So we're in 29 states now, and again, over 425 restaurants, and still continuing to grow.
Sure are.
Yeah.
So that Egg and I acquisition was in 2015. So we doubled in size at that point, and then a couple of years later, you grew from chief marketing officer to president, and then ultimately CEO. Did you ever think you would be CEO? Was that the plan?
Actually, can I ask a question? Who in here either is the CEO of your organization, if it's an agency or whatnot, or desires to do something like that, be more than get out of PR but use it? Okay, so here's the thing I'd say, because I always, what's a takeaway for everybody here? Whether you want to or not, the takeaway for me was one of the deficiencies that I felt like I had in me and that I saw in our profession, and I still feel like my agency experience helped me tremendously, was not a full understanding of the business itself and of the numbers and of the financials. I realized that the more I knew about that, the more effective I could be in my communications. And so for me, it was not by design. When I started at First Watch, there were, again, 20 people at the home office, so I had to do everything. Ken and I did everything. We did real estate, culinary, HR. We didn't have an HR. We did purchasing. And so wearing all those hats gave me all the experience that I think if I had gone into an organization that had all those disciplines already outlined, I wouldn't have been able to get promoted, frankly. But because I had to do all them, kind of easing into a president's role made it a lot easier. And so the way I talk about it is don't just look at the I would say the barriers of your own position, but really try to understand. And there's, anybody in any part of our business, if they want to know anything about the financials or any of that, we love sharing it. We feel like the more they know, the better. And it's amazing to me how many companies don't share that information with people in their organization, that they only understand their role and not how it plays into the overall health and success of the business. So for me, if again, it makes you more valuable even in your current roles, but I think it also then sets you up for the ability to grow.
Absolutely. And earlier you talked about Carrie at the Orlando Magic would pull you into meetings and you would be a fly on the wall and just listen and learn and absorb. And you've created a culture at First Watch that's similar to that, in that if finance and HR are meeting on whatever and you're curious, you go sit in on it, and that's,
no secrets unless it's, people's personal, either compensation or things like that. But, everybody has the right to know everything that's going on with the business. And again, I think it makes them better. How old were you when you started at First Watch?
21.
21. And Eleni got to be in meetings that, afterwards she'd come in and say, I didn't understand this part, or I've never heard of this, and we would talk about that. The only way for Eleni or anybody else to grow is to do that. And also setting up a culture that allows for that is really, really important. And that also doesn't just come from the CEO. That has to be the culture throughout the organization. You have to set that up early so that people know that it's an okay thing to do.
Absolutely. So the CEO typically comes, I hate to generalize, but in a lot of Fortune 500 companies, CEOs come up through finance or operations. You did not, and I think the way our company is now structured and functioning is kind of a reflection of your coming up through PR and communications. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I think traditionally it was the CFO or COO that would be the successor to the CEO or president. What's great and what I'm seeing now is more marketing folks, if you will, or brand folks come up and take on those roles. And the reason that's happening is because I think organizations in general, not to mention the ownership of these organizations, even if it's a publicly traded company, they realize the value of the brand. And again, not to generalize, but a CFO will typically try to save their way to success, and a COO isn't really open to innovation. They have their ops procedures and they want to keep it simple. By taking a brand approach, you're really focusing on what is best for the customer. And then you work with your key stakeholders in the other areas to make those come to life. So for us, even though we are 100% an ops-driven company, and that made my job really easy and still does to this day, taking that higher level viewpoint of the customer and then understanding how best do we evolve this brand to meet the needs of the customer. I don't think you would get that from a typical CFO or a typical head of operations. I just think that's not how their brains work. So that's what we've done, and I've seen. Actually, I can name now 5 or 6 since my appointment in our industry where they've become presidents or CEOs from marketing.
Love that. So your background in marketing and communications also really helped us particularly get through these past 18 months, call it, not only in the decisions we made and the actions we took, but then ultimately the communications that followed it. So let's talk about some of that crisis management, the actions that we took last year when COVID really started to hit us.
Yeah. Again, 2019, we were the fastest growing full service restaurant company in America. We had industry leading results, and we were getting all those, accolades, and we were running on all cylinders for sure. We were happy but not satisfied. We kept driving the concept forward. We had decided to expand into Chicago, and in 2020 was going to be our expansion year into Chicago. We typically pick one new market to open restaurants in, and so we were excited about going to Chicago. We had leases signed and had started construction. And even the first 2 months of 20 were spectacular, and we felt like we were really on a roll. And then March hit, and we got sucker punched like everybody else did. And mind you, I had become CEO in 18, had a great year in 19, and then so relatively new CEO to be dealing with that. And it just, it hit the restaurant industry very, very hard, as everybody knows. And so we went from, running full speed on a treadmill to it just stopping. And it was, easily the most difficult time in my professional career, having to make decisions that never even crossed my mind because of how well we were doing about, furloughing 9,000 people, knowing that they didn't have anywhere to go to get a job. We basically shut down the entire company for 6 months. There were only 91 of us in the whole organization that stayed on and worked. And we did everything we could to keep the company going. Thankfully, we had a really great private equity partner who staked us during that time. I mean, we went from call it 400 restaurants to 0 revenue for 6 months. But this was something I'll never forget. So we did have to make the decision to furlough, again, 9,000 hourly employees. But we did it, culture is very, very important to us at First Watch. And so for us, all of our decisions were based on our culture and using that as a North Star. So even when times were the darkest, that drove our decision making. So some of the things I'm really proud of that we did is we offered make whole bonuses for our managers and above. That basically said, when we furlough you, whatever you get from unemployment, however short that is from what you made with us, when you come back, we'll pay you that difference. Now, this was before the federal government had said what the benefits were going to be, so we didn't know if this was going to be a $100,000 check or a $2 million check that we were going to have to write. And unlike a hurricane where it's going to be over in 3 days and you just have to pick up the pieces, we had no idea how long this was going to last, obviously. So we did that. And then any of our hourly employees who had been with us for 3 years or more, we gave them a bonus upon furloughing and then a return bonus when they came back. So the bonus upon furloughing was for them to take care of any immediate needs that they had. And if you remember at the time, it was very difficult to see a doctor, get childcare, do all those things, or get unemployment for that matter, how backed up it was. So we gave them a bonus. And then the other thing is we gave all of our employees, regardless of whether or not they were on our insurance, we paid for telemedicine for them, so they could get access to a doctor. Because, as you know, we all had questions, and there was a vacuum of information, and it was really difficult to do things. We set up a 501c3 almost in no time, and along with our private equity partners, between all of the executives taking pay cuts and our private equity partners putting some money in, we put $800,000 in a 501c3 that was set up just for our employees, so they could fill out applications for grants, for anything they needed, no questions asked, up to $1,000 to pay for rent, car payment, whatever they needed, child care. But the most important thing we did, ironically, had nothing to do with money. It was, we set up a communications program. And I know this organization preaches about internal audiences, you know, as it should. We focused on our internal audiences. And what we did was we set up an internal communications program to where every one of our furloughed employees heard from their bosses once a week, just as a check-in on their health, on their wellness, how are they doing? We still care about you just because we don't see you every day. And I personally called every home office employee that was furloughed. And because, you know, I couldn't imagine what that felt like. You know, they were doing a great job. It's through no fault of their own. Now they don't have a job. And, you know, I wanted to make sure they didn't feel less of themselves, didn't feel like it was anything that they did. Let them know that they're still important to us. And the last thing I always said to them was, we're working very, very hard to get you back as soon as possible. And so all those programs that we did, they talk about the communication piece being the most important. Why? Because they heard and saw a lot of their friends who would show up at their restaurant job, and there would just be a sign on the door and padlock on the door that said, we're closed, call here about your paycheck. And we always said that's not how you treat family. And if we're going to talk about our culture for all these years and in the training talk about our culture, now is the time for us to, you know, walk the walk and actually stand behind that culture. So that's what we did. And I'm happy to say when I know we're not through COVID, but when we got past the worst of it and reopened, 100% of our directors of operations came back, 90% of our general managers came back, and 75% of our hourly employees came back. And if you look at the hiring environment right now and how many restaurants are having to close on Mondays, close at night, they don't have employees to do this, we haven't had to do that. And I 100% credit it to that communication and how we treated them at the worst time. So thank you. The other thing I did, which was a little risky, was I was very honest with them. I recorded videos very frequently and told them what was going on. I told them when we, you know, didn't have a lot of money left in the bank and what we were doing about it. And you know, there were some things, some hard decisions we made. We stopped, you know, we reimburse our employees for college education. It's called the EGGS program. Everybody gets graduate support. Every so many hours they work, they get dollars towards their college education. We had to stop that program and not contribute to that. But we did everything we could. We negotiated almost every single one of our leases for all of our restaurants and got our landlords, because we've been good partners with them, to either abate or defer our rent so that we could manage our cash flow better. And then we were paying for all those things for our employees. So, but the communication piece through these videos, you know, it's very hard to communicate with 9,000 hourly employees. So we did it through videos, and we were able to send them directly to their phones and things like that. But again, I was very honest with them about where we were in the process, what we were trying to do, all the steps that we were taking, but I always ended it, we want you back, and we're going to work really hard to get you back. And, you know, hardest time for me ever. The other thing that was just so cool, and I saved every single one of them, was when I sent the video out about the furloughs, which was heart-wrenching. I could not believe how many emails and letters I got from our employees asking how I was, knowing how difficult, they said, we know how difficult the decision is for you. We know you don't have a choice to do this. It was, I mean, some who I've met and some who I haven't met, but I have a stack that I keep, and maybe I'll make it a book someday, but you know, it was, for as difficult as the times were back then, it was really neat to see just people come together in a company, you know, where I can't possibly know all 9,000 employees, but at that time, it felt like I did.
Absolutely. And, you know, our focus was, of course, on internal communications, regular, transparent through this entire time. Still is, really. But of course, when a concept like ours decides to close 400 restaurants, you've got to acknowledge it externally, right? So instead of, sending out a press release or, doing what a company would typically do, we took a bit of a unique approach in that you authored a letter, and we published it on our website, and you published it on your LinkedIn as an article, as opposed to sending it to media knowing they would write the story and pull the quotes they wanted to pull, but you really wanted the impact of these words to go direct to consumer, if you will. So we have on the slide, if we can put it up there, an excerpt from that note, but that approach we took really was, we wanted our customers and our employees to hear from you. We didn't want them to read about it in the newspaper first and whatnot. So after we communicated internally about the closures and furloughs, this is the approach we took externally, which was unique.
Yeah, I think the first thing we said is we don't want our employees to read about anything or hear about anything before they've heard it from us. So setting up Zooms and calls and whatever we needed to do to make sure everybody heard it from me first. But this was never intended to get any kind of media pickup. This was to, look, our employees love connecting with me on LinkedIn, and I accept every single one. So we found out quickly that it was a great way to talk to our employees indirectly, because there actually were some things we weren't allowed to do because they were on furlough, and you can't have communication with employees directly, or that's a violation of, they wouldn't be eligible for benefits. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put that in jeopardy at all. So this really was just our way of getting our word out, and also to let people know that we were closing our restaurants. And it was, I couldn't believe how viral it went. It's at over 30,000 views. But again, the comments were what blew me away, and the fact that so many of our employees saw it. But it almost took on a life of its own. And then the media actually did pick it up. Again, it wasn't written as a press release. It was frankly a personal letter that I was writing to our key stakeholders to let them know the decision that we made, what went behind the decision, and what we were doing. And it ended up getting picked up, which was fine. It really was our way of communicating with our key stakeholders, and it's just different than, it just didn't feel right putting out a press release or an alert or something like that to talk about something that really was so difficult and so personal.
Absolutely, and I know we're over time. Thank you for being patient with us. But we do want to open up the floor for a few questions, if you have questions for either one of us about Chris's journey or our COVID response or anything like that. So.
Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
As someone who began their career in the hospitality and customer service industry before going into PR, I'm fascinated about your approach to the culture and customer service at First Watch, particularly as you grew, as you start to see this amazing growth in the restaurant collection. How did you maintain that level of customer service training and orientation? What were some of the necessities that you couldn't do without in maintaining that kind of culture?
I sometimes, or a lot of times, get asked the question, what keeps me up at night? And it's the dilution of our culture as we grow. So we've looked at that over the years, and we're really, really great. First of all, we have so many people that have been with us for a long time. Our general manager's tenure averages 10 years, and above restaurants even longer than that. So a lot of our training, if you will, was tribal knowledge that got passed along. And we realized when we started the aggressive growth that wasn't going to sustain us, and that we would start to get dilution. And my challenge was, when we open a new restaurant and we have 40 new employees, how do we make them evangelists rather than look at them as a potential for dilution of the culture? So we made a decision 4 or 5 years ago. We have a 10-week training program for our managers. We added an 11th week that is nothing but the culture, the history, the values, the mission, and not only that, it's in Sarasota. So we can teach you how to flip eggs and do inventory and write schedules at the restaurants, but we fly everybody in to Sarasota. We have 2 classes a month, and that whole week is nothing but really the heartbeat and the DNA of the company and the why. And so, our mission is called You First, and what it means is we put our employees first, and then we ask them to put our customers first. We just didn't feel like leaving that up to, again, all the folks that are out in the field to make sure that that gets across was smart. So, I mean, it's a huge investment, as you can imagine, to fly, 25 people twice a month into Sarasota and then have a full week of training with hotels, meals, everything else. But that's how important we felt it was to us. And also, when we grow rapidly like we are, if I went to our real estate department and said, I want to open 1,000 restaurants next year, they could find me 1,000 great sites. But that means I need 3,000 managers. And we've always built and expanded behind great people. And so it's absurd not to invest in that the same way we invest in real estate. And so that's what we did. They get to hear from our founder. I do the closing at their graduation, and I join them for dinner. They can ask any questions they want. And literally, that's the same thing I talked about earlier. They can ask any questions they want, and we answer them. So that's our investment there. Especially when you're decentralized like we are, in 29 different states. You want to make sure that carries through. I think there's one over here.
Hello.
Hi.
First, I'd like to thank both of you. When you closed, you all had purchased tons of personal sanitizers for your employees, and you donated those to Sarasota Memorial, and we distributed those to our employees.
Yep.
So thank you for that kind donation back at the beginning of
welcome.
all of this. And then I wanted to ask you about your beautiful new building right off of
Yes.
I-75 in Lakewood Ranch. Congratulations on your new corporate headquarters. Thank you for staying in the Central West Coast market so that we can keep a laney. But tell us about that. Was that in the works before all the COVID? And
It
you
was.
put it on hold, or how did that process happen with your new corporate headquarters?
Yeah, so we did a groundbreaking for our new corporate office in December of 19. When we acquired the Egg and I, again, we doubled in size. The corporate office that we were in, we felt like we were good for a long time. 100 restaurants, we're good, we have plenty of room. Then we all of a sudden go to 200 and some restaurants and we're out of space. And so we kept renting space in this office park that we were in. So our development department was, 2 buildings over, our HR was over here, and accounting was over there, and it just wasn't, for a company that's built on culture like ours, it wasn't conducive because there just wasn't that interaction and that collaboration. So thankfully, all that space we leased was through one landlord, and we went to them and said, this isn't working, can you help us? And they said, how about we build you a building? So we said, great. So we broke ground in December, COVID hit, and I just remember everybody was working remotely, and I'm thinking, wow, this was really not smart and not good timing. Everyone's going to be working remotely when we get back, and we're going to have this big new corporate office. But it's a wonderful space. Everybody's in it now. We've been in it for about a month and a half. It's hard to want to work remote when you have this kind of facility. It's a great, employee break room, a balcony outside, a gym that'll rival LA Fitness, and just for all of us to be under one roof again after 5 or 7 years of not being so, it's been great. It's been great for the organization, but more importantly, great for the culture. So we signed a long lease, so we'll be there a long time.
Chris, you have a question?
I remember reading when you all made the decision to shut all the restaurants down, that you also looked at your restaurant layout, design, customer experience, and so maybe talk a little bit about the changes that you've made moving forward during that time.
Sure. So the 91 of us that stayed around, I tell people we worked harder than we ever have when our restaurants were closed than when they were open. And we just went to work and we said, okay, let's use this period of time where the restaurants are closed. Again, just always wanting to be on offense and having our foot on the pedal. What's going to set us up for success on the other side of this? There will be another side of this at some time. So what do we want to do? So we did little to no to-go before. Obviously, then during that, when we reopened, we were doing a lot of off-premise. So we launched a new app where you could order online. Before that, you had to call our restaurants to order to go. We put in touchless payments. We started working on the prototype of the restaurants and putting in bars, and we accelerated the rollout of alcohol. We now offer alcohol at First Watch for brunch. No, after seeing some of you guys at the bar last night, nobody needs any more alcohol. Actually, we were voted best hangover breakfast, so if we get out of here in time, you can go there.
Real.
So yeah, we just looked at the facilities, looked at the processes. What else could we do? We opened a new restaurant here in Winter Park, Florida. If you get a chance, go see it. That's the new prototype. It has an indoor-outdoor bar that's really cool. You won't see this because it's in the kitchen, but it has a double make line. So we have a line where people are just making food for to-go and a separate to-go pickup area. So we did all those kinds of things. We're focusing more on patios, just in case we ever have to move to more outdoor seating like we did during COVID. But all those things. So we used it as an opportunity to innovate. And my line that everybody at the offices or the company is sick of hearing is at the very beginning I said, COVID for us will not be a setback, it will be a setup. It's a setup for our future, and we have to look at it that way. You know, it's the old phrase of never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, that's kind of what our approach was, and so from that standpoint, we wanted to look at how can we evolve our concept during this time and again be relevant for many years to come. It's hard for a 38-year-old company to continue to stay relevant, but we've adopted a culture of change at our organization, so we're used to it. Like if we're not evolving, we kind of get bored.
It's true. I've never been bored since we started.
Yeah.
Any more? One last?
One more.
I'm curious because you're the daytime cafe. It seems like the culture can very easily be built around family then. And is that top of mind in many restaurants then tried to expand further than that? But it seems like it's just ready-made to improve employee morale, all sorts of things. And is that just top of mind in all your operations?
Yeah, it's a cornerstone for us, actually, and it's a big differentiator for us in the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry is grueling, and the hours suck. And for us, we have a no night shifts ever employee proposition that there's a couple things. They don't have to work nights. We run one shift. It's just 7 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. We don't have deep fryers in our restaurants or microwaves. Deep fryers, if you've ever worked in a restaurant with deep fryers, you come home smelling like oil, and it's a fresh environment. But for our employees, they get to be home every night with their families. They have dinner with them. They can coach sports. They can do all that, put them to bed, help them with homework. So it's a key differentiator for us, and we have lower turnover on both the hourly and management ranks than our industry average, and that's a big piece of it.
Please say thank you. So, is there anybody in this room who wasn't inspired? So, I've been wanting to do something for a long time, and before, we always have little nice little gift bags and everything, and we'll do that. But I've wanted to apologize to Chris for years for something I did when he worked for us. He came to work, he's a young guy, and he showed up at work one day with no socks on. And we're, kind of a 3-button suit, buttoned up, conservative, kind of. I said, Chris, where are your socks? It was a style. Not at Curly and Pin. And so I felt so bad, but we were going to go to a meeting. And I said, Chris, go put some socks on. He said, Raj, are you kidding me? Are you serious? He was. P.I. But Chris, I want you to know, I hate socks. And I hate socks really bad. They make your feet itch, don't they? Yeah, right. But you're wearing some. I'm so proud of you. But as part of our gift to you, I wanted you to have a pair that can fit in your pocket at any time. And then to hell with it. I'm hoping he forgave me. Eleni, I won't tease you. Thank you so much. You are a tremendous, valuable part of this organization. Chris, thank you so much. One more round of applause. And now, the best annual conference VP ever, Lindsay Hudak.
All right, thank you, Roger. Thank you, Eleni. Thank you, Chris. Chris, where'd you go? I've got to tell you, little update on that little club that you started. It is now regularly over 100 members strong and is often the largest chapter of FPRA in the state. So, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you on behalf of Quotes. So, appreciate what you did there. All right, so if you have not gotten your business card into the business card drawing, we have Ryan and Jenna making their way through the room. Be sure to flag them down. Also, round of applause for them who have been amazing so far this conference with running things and all manner of support. So, have we had a good week? It's been pretty good, right? Our incredibly talented and wonderful friends at Digital Fury, Mark Rice and his crew, have put together a little video capturing some of the highlights. So let's take a look.
When I joined FPRA back in 2005, it took me a few years to realize how important conference was.
This conference is the pinnacle of professional development, networking, and peer recognition.
If you want to learn how to touch lives, how to create a lasting change, how to do it on a global scale, and how to advance your career, let me hear you say yes.
Yes. To be in the room with these incredible industry thought leaders and hear from them directly and be able to talk to them, it's amazing.
For me, FPRA is family.
Family.
Family. You're one big family. Seeing old friends and meeting new friends, this conference has everything that you want in it.
Certainly the President's Lunch is a highlight because that's where the chapters learn what they're winning.
Love, love, love going to Image Awards. Everyone getting in their gowns and black ties and getting together to celebrate wonders in public relations.
It truly is transformational in what it does for your career if you take the time to invest in it.
Mark is amazing. That was some very quick editing, so we appreciate his efforts very much. I hope it's been a transformative week. Whether you're a student looking forward to joining this field or a seasoned, respected leader in our industry, I hope that you found something in this week that inspired you, motivated you, or maybe helped you grow. This time with all of you has been all of those things for me. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing in the vision. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the opportunity to get to be a part of all of it. I'm going to ask one more time for everyone to please remember to fill out your evaluations. Right? I get to pass this mantle to Mandy Handley, APR, and I know she's going to want to know how you felt about things and what you thought went well and where we can continue to build on annual conference for next year. And then for my final official act, right, I need to call up Allison Lundell, APR-CPRC, to help me with our inaugural Adrian Moore APR-CPRC 2022 Conference Scholarship. And I think we have one more basket coming, right? Oh, I know, it's very exciting. I'm mixing it all up. Knock it over the table. Here it is. All right, no, that's all you.
Oh. It's Roger Penn. Congratulations!
That's hilarious. That's excellent.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
While I'm here, first and foremost, I want to thank Gordon Paulus and the past presidents for what we just did. We have always, well, not always, but for a long time now, have provided a scholarship for conference at the end of the conference every year. But we wanted to honor Adrian, who was an incredible member from the Treasure Coast chapter, who left us late last year. And she loved coming to conference. And I hope, for those of you who are new this year, I hope you caught the bug or drank the Kool-Aid while you were with us and will come back, because it's the connections in this room that brought Adrian back every year. So Gordon, thank you, and all the past presidents for naming this after Adrian. I know she's looking down upon us right now and really excited that we're all here together again, so thank you for that. I also want to take a moment to congratulate Lindsay on an incredible conference. I remember when the pandemic hit, and I was on a phone call with Lindsay and Sheree, and we didn't know what in the world to do, but we knew Lindsay had put so much work into this, and she needed this moment, and the fact that she agreed to stay on and do it was pretty incredible, because she could have said, I'm out of here. But this is 2 years of such hard, incredible work, and it has honestly paid off, I hope you agree, in everything you've experienced this week. So, Lindsay, as a token of our appreciation, thank you for giving us this time together. You're welcome. Back to you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much, guys. So what do you say we just do this all again, same time, same place next year? Sounds pretty great, right? Thank you very much, everyone. Please do mark your calendars. We are right back here in the Ritz next year, August 7th through 10th, and I really hope to see you all here. So thank you again for being with us, and travel safe.